Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bloom. Actually, it's been quite some time since we've all gathered here. I'm excited to be back. We took a little break, much needed, but I want to reintroduce Bloom to everyone as a platform dedicated to the empowerment and the enrichment of women. And I am so excited to relaunch Bloom with our next guest. This topic was chosen, and I think it deeply resonates for a lot of us. And it's about burnout in the workplace, or burnout in general, honestly, and how it affects your life, both personally and professionally. And my next guest is the perfect person to really dive in on this conversation about burnout and really give you some tools to help manage it. And also, let's open up the discussion to talk about how burnout is not just a personal thing, but it's a thing that has responsibility placed on the workplace as well to address this issue. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my first guest, and her name is Chichi, and she is a certified personal coach. She's an entrepreneur and dynamic leader with extensive expertise in talent acquisition, leadership development, diversity and equity and inclusion. Chichi has held multiple leadership roles with global organizations such as Goldman Sachs, Amazon, Oracle, where she spearheaded multiple initiatives that improved the organizational culture and promoted the growth of high achieving individuals. She's also the founder of Her Power Pose, which I am personally a fan of myself,
Thank
where
you.
she helps high achieving women excel in their careers without burnout. And she's passionate about empowering women to succeed in their careers and leadership roles by guiding them to step into roles that resonate, set boundaries, align with their work, their strengths, and build strategic relationships. Chi, thank you for being here. So happy to have
Hey,
you.
I'm excited to be here. Oh my God. When did we do our last? I think it was like
Ooh,
2 years ago.
it probably was. Yes.
My God. So it's so good to see you again. I think the last one was about negotiation. That
Yes.
was a very, very good topic. So Kia, I appreciate you reaching out and bringing me back to just have this really important conversation. So excited to be here and excited to jump in.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so tell me, why do you think that this topic is so important? And why does it resonate with so much with a lot of your audience?
Yeah. So, I've been a career coach for, I would say, 10 years. Most of my clientele have been referral based. And in the last 3 years, I would say I've pivoted to be very intentional and focus on high achieving women. And what I found in my clientele and just engaging with high achieving women is that the there's just this innate, I would say, external and internal pressure that they give themselves and the world gives them to be able to do all the things, right? Whether they're mothers or parents, um, there's this pressure, right? It's like I'm not spending enough time with my friends. I'm not spending enough time with my children. I'm not spending enough time with my partner. So there's just innate pressure that just exists in the world that we live in today. So I'm seeing a lot of women that they want to achieve um, certain levels of success in their career, but they're tired, right? They're tired of the burnout. They're tired of the late nights, and they're just tired of having to give all of themselves and not feeling seen or recognized. And it's become prevalent, and um, it's my mission. I really truly believe it's my mission to support women in their journey to be able to get to where they need to get to in their careers without the burnout, with more ease, with joy, and without having to sacrifice the things that matter the most to them.
Yes, yes, yeah. Sacrifice is a big word, a common word that a lot of times firsthand that we hear amongst women, and resentment tends to kick in when we're not living the
Mhm.
life we truly desire. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation about how boundaries, et cetera, can come into place and really help us prioritize things that are meaningful to us. So I truly believe that most of us, if not all of us, have experienced burnout at one point of our lives. But if someone is not familiar with burnout, or maybe they just don't recognize it, what are some common symptoms that you normally hear people speak about?
Yeah. So again, I want to preface by saying, I'm not a therapist, right? I'm a coach
Right.
that works very closely with women, high achieving women that often experience burnout. So I'll share some of the symptoms that I see from the women that I engage with. Um, uh, But before that, I want to be clear that we have to, as women, especially high achieving women, take the time to be more intentional, to reflect and step back from the hustle and bustle of the life that we live, to look at what's your current state, like being able to assess, like, what is my current state, like how am I feeling. And then once you've done the assessment to understand, like, how are you feeling, and if there's anxiety or anxiousness there, identifying the different stressors that could be bubbling that up for you, whether it's an employee at work, your boss, right, the project that's upcoming, whatever the stressors may be, identify those things and get really clear on them. But I also think it's when you step back and you identify your stressors, it's equally important for you to be able to reflect and understand what your personal values are, what are your goals, right? Because once you start understanding and getting clear on your personal values and goals, then you know how to level set the stressors, right? So something that's stressing you that doesn't align to your values, that doesn't align to your goals, then you have to really ask yourself, are those things that you need to be prioritizing? And then it helps you kind of be able to minimize your attention in that area. But earlier burnout signs include emotional exhaustion,
Mm.
feel detached, and then often what I find is that the women that come to me and they've gotten to a place of burnout, they have a declining job performance, or they don't feel like the work that they're producing aligns to the level that they're at. So they're often coming and saying, Chichi, like there's a disconnect between how my boss sees me and how I see myself. And that's generally what I find where they're creeping on up to that stage of burnout, and they're not giving the performances and aligning to the role and title they were hired for. So I
Mhm.
encourage women to check in regularly with themselves, have clarity sessions with themselves, do journaling exercises, and that will help you kind of bubble up any of the things that you could be feeling as burnout starts to creep in.
Yeah, I think obviously great advice. One of the things that really stood out to me is journaling exercises. Taking that, like you said, like maybe 15 minutes in the morning or afternoon to really check in with ourselves, and something that we don't normally give ourselves permission to do. But I know definitely firsthand that I benefited greatly from that. And also having like a good support system too, right? Like some
Yeah,
good girlfriends or, friends, guy friends that can really look at us and tell us like, oh, you don't look like yourself, or I'm noticing some signs of brain fog and things like
yeah,
that.
that's right.
Yeah. So some of the things that I researched is that some signs of burnout can be even like headaches or digestive issues, feeling alone in the world, loss of motivation, a lot of things that you talked about. Um, what are some things that you would recommend to help someone maintain balance?
Yeah. Good questions, Akia. Oftentimes when I'm working with my clients, the goal is to get them to the transformation that they're looking for, right? Why they hired me. But in addition to getting them to that transformation, I'm equally mindful of the importance of creating balance and boundaries as we journey to whatever that transformation looks like. So oftentimes I suggest to them micro strategies. So like time blocking for focused work periods. Throughout my career, once I became more savvy, right? Not earlier in my career, I was still learning, but as I became more savvy, one of the things I did very intentionally was to block a 60-minute time period on my calendar every single day.
Mhm.
And that time was specifically set for me to do the things that I felt like were strategic work that would take me to the next stage or phase in my career, right?
Okay.
It often didn't align to what I was hired for. It was work that I knew because I've built strategic relationships. I knew there were things that were coming down and I wanted to be in front of them. So my 60-minute time block, I would do things like research, like what's going on in competitor benchmarking. Now I know that there I'm sharing a tactical advice to like what you can do to get ahead. But if you really think about what that that strategy does for a woman or just an employee in itself is when you're starting to look at work as how can I start aligning myself to the things that matter to the organization? Yes, they hired me for this job, but there's things that are critical that are coming down the pike. And if I get in front of them, the work that you're doing every day, right? It becomes, I don't want to say it's not important, but it becomes a little bit less important because now you're speaking in a future state. You're starting to talk to your leader, your skip level at another level, and you're bringing them ideas that they haven't had the time to even think about. So because you're doing this, right, you can spend less time, and someone would have to work with me to get the specific details on how to do this at a super high level, but ultimately you're setting strategies for yourself to have balance. Because imagine, right, you were hired as a marketing leader or marketing manager, right, and that's your day in job, but you know that in the next 5 years your company wants to do XYZ in the marketing space, and you're blocking 60 minutes to get very, very innovative in the future state of where your company's trying to go. And then you bring that to your leader, right? And you start talking about that future state. Your leader's going to be a little bit less focused on. So tell me about that marketing project I have you working on. They're going to want to have more insight on that strategic project or futuristic idea that you've been able to take the time to block to get creative around. So what I'm suggesting is when you're thinking about balance, think about doing the work that matters the most. I'm not saying your day to day doesn't matter, but what I'm saying is that leadership has a vision that's bigger than the day to day, and
Mm-hmm.
start getting ahead of that. So that's a specific strategy that I've used throughout my career, and it's worked time and time again. And I feel like it's what's helped me create relationships, get tapped for opportunities, and get to the senior vice president level. So that's one thing I would call out. Then I would say set hard stops to the day. I'm one that when my day is over, it's over, right? So generally, I recommend the same to my clients. If you're telling me that you want to spend more intentional time with your children, how do you create a day that is focused and you're doing intentional work that matters? And then you're ending your day at 4 or 5 or whatever that time is for you. So set intentional hard stops to the day. And then another one I would call out is um, do things that align. Of course, do your job, but work on things that align with your core professional goals. Bake those things into your day to day. I think that helps you also create some balance where the focus is not always getting this project completed, but you're also throwing in things that are relevant to your professional goals, and similar to the suggestion I presented earlier, will help you continue to go forward in your career. And one more thing I would add, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people do this, right? Taking quick walks, right? Or like just taking like 10 or 15 minutes to go for a walk. I do want to share a tool that I've used time and time again in my career. It's Pomodoro. So if you Google Pomodoro, there are Pomodoro calendar clocks all over the internet. Pomodoro is a method where you're setting 25-minute intentional time blocks to do specific work, and you are 100% focused on that specific task for 25 minutes. And then you have a 5-minute break. So it keeps going in that sequence: 25-minute work, 5-minute block, 25-minute work, 5-minute block. And what you find is that you're more focused and you get more done throughout the day. So when we talk about setting those hard stops of the day, you're able to do that because you've been intentional throughout your day and how you produce work.
I love that. I'm definitely going to use that tool myself. That's fantastic. I
I
have to
love it.
ask you though, where did you learn this from? Were you always like this, or is this something like did you hit a wall at one point, or what got you to this space?
That's a great question. So I'm first generation Nigerian American,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom, right, just you can't, well, we all came to America together. And one of the things that I saw very quickly is that for most Americans, their job creates the opportunities, right? I know we're in a new stage and an age of like hustle. Everybody should have a business and let me start my own startup. But the reality is, most Americans become millionaires by working their regular 9 to 5 job. So the idea that business is the only way to create success is false. And at that period of time in my life, I knew that I wanted to create a lifestyle for myself, but I
Mhm.
did not. One thing is like I knew I didn't have the generations to guide me, and I didn't know how to get there personally. So I'm quiet unless I know you. So I'm very quiet and and I observe the people that got to the top and the ones that didn't. So early on, with through observation and seeing how the people that got to the top, like how they communicated, how they prioritized work that mattered and the work that didn't matter, right? And how they were strategic in speaking up. And one of the things that I feel took me to the next level wasn't, I didn't stop at observing. I took action to the things that I saw, right? I think oftentimes we observe or we read books, but we don't put the action behind it.
Mhm.
So I put the action behind it. I asked the bold questions. I made the bold statements. I like I've shared this story before, but I'll share it. You know, early in my career, I think I was 20 something and I was a recruiter because I started off my career as a recruiter. And a pretty senior leader, this is when I was at Amazon the first time, a pretty senior leader came to our offices. And I mean, when I tell you she was pretty senior, she was very senior. And I went up to her and I said, I would love to have a meeting with you.
Oh.
And she was like, "Who is this? Who is this little black girl?" Um, and she was like, yeah, I'm happy to meet with you." So I figured out the location. I set everything up, and the first thing I said when I walked into that meeting is, "I should be you." And this is a true, like this is a real true story. And I'm like, "I should be you, but I don't have the mentorship to get there. But I should be sitting where you're sitting." And this is at 20 something. And she was taken aback. She was like, what type of person has this much guts to come up and tell me that they should be sitting in my seat? And immediately as she went back to, she was in New York. She went back to New York and she emailed me and connected me to another woman. And she was like, "You need to know this girl." And that woman now is the head of diversity, the chief diversity officer for a pretty large sports company. But I share that to say that I I read, I observed, but I took action.
Mhm.
I hired coaches, and I knew where I wanted to go, and yeah, and I applied. So you know, I'm thankful that, and of course, God. That's a big one. I have to always mention God is
Yeah.
very important for favor because favor is a big deal. But yeah, so that's kind of how the journey, you know, went, and I got to the senior vice president level, and now I'm here running my business full time.
Awesome. I love that. I love that you were actually confident enough to go up to her and just really express your interest and say, like, I should be here. I have the desires and I know I have it in me to be here. That's
Yeah,
bold. I love it
I'm so
though.
crazy. The fact that I said I should be you, I'm like, when I left that office, I was like, "Girl, why did you tell that woman you should be her?" Like, come on, like, but it but it worked out, right?
Yeah.
So she made that connection, and I will tell you, Zakia, that the connection she made for me, it created another connection, and every job I landed was from that. It started from that connection.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. You know, a lot of times, I'm sure as you know as well, sometimes people don't have the support from their family members to help, groom them and mentor them to achieve certain level of success. But even your story, I mean, it's a testament to, successful people always like to reach back and pull other successful people up. And so positioning yourself around people who, are where you want to be, um, can present a great opportunity to anyone,
Yeah,
honestly.
it does.
Yeah.
It definitely does. I mean, even like yesterday or 2 days ago, I presented on a topic for a very large tech company in front of 250 leaders, and that opportunity was brought to me by the chief diversity officer for that company. And again, it was based on a relationship that I built. So I don't know if I shared with you. So a part of the her power pose, I created a framework with how I do this work, how I get women to the transformation.
Okay.
And within my framework, there are different pillars that speak to the things. And I had to reflect, and I asked myself, like, what were the things that I feel like were key to get me to the place that I was able to get to in my career. And from, taking the time, reflecting, working with an amazing coach, he's like an amazing business coach, I was able to put together these three pillars. And a key part of the pillar is the partner growth strategy. And a partner growth strategy, whether you're looking for a job or in a career that you're trying to navigate, it's really about building strategic networks. I I mean, full stop, right? And I think that oftentimes we're building networks, we're building relationships, and we're building them. We're not. So one thing, I don't build relationships so that I can be stressed about maintaining those relationships, because I
Hmm.
find that sometimes with the high achieving women I work with, like, they are so tired and so exhausted that even staying connected to those relationships is really hard, because they can barely stay connected to their friends. So I'm teaching women how to also build those strategic relationships, but make it a true relationship where it's not like I'm leveraging the person because I need something from them, but I'm building a relationship that doesn't create tension for me, but helps me further along with my goals, and vice versa, right? You're helping that person along, further along with their goals as well. So I think it's important to be able to, even in the work of trying to get to the next place, be smart about how we're doing it, so that we're not creating additional stress for ourselves, and we are being very mindful of the boundaries that we want to hold, for ourselves, in our family and our lives overall.
Okay, that's great. So, what are some key attributes that you say are very important when you're kind of maybe looking at people who are in senior level positions where you want to be to try to assess if they would be a good mentor to someone?
Yeah. So, available.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think that oftentimes we are we are looking for mentors that are not. So a mentorship is a two-way street. It's a two-way relationship. But often, if a mentor shows you signs that they're not available, right? They're closed. I've seen so many women chasing mentors and chasing people to be their mentor, and messaging them and emailing them and not getting anything back. So that's definitely not someone you're wanting to continue to pursue. But when I talk about creating mentorship and relationships, I don't want I don't want us to approach it in that manner. I want us to approach it from a perspective of, I want to get to know this person. Like, I come from a place where we're all looking for that human connection. So how do you think about it less from a perspective of, I need a mentor,
Hmm.
the sponsor, but I want to create a true connection with this person that will stand the test of time. I mean, I still text and communicate with managers from 2007. And I know, right? Like, when I started working, one of them follows me on Facebook, and I mean, we communicate, we text each other, but that relationship was a smooth relationship. So I think one of the things is, look for someone that you can have a smooth relationship with. Look for someone that is also available and open to you and wants to welcome you. Because when you have a mentor that feels closed off, I find that, at least from some of the communications from the women I work with, they start thinking that there's something wrong with them, and the mentor doesn't want to build a relationship because they're not of value or they're not good enough. But just know, like, it has nothing to do with you. Build mentorship relationships that are open, but go in with the
Hmm.
mindset that this is a need for human connection, and nothing more. If something comes from it, great, and if it doesn't, that's fine. You've been able to connect with just another human. So that's a big piece, and it really impacts how I navigate that mentorship sponsorship relationship. It's just about building human connection. So my advice to your question would be, look for the human connection. Look for someone that's in the field that you're in. Look for someone that is, I like, generally 2 to 3 steps ahead of you, and where you want to go. But first and foremost, build the connection.
That's perfect advice. Again, I remember one time I had someone that connected with me and offered to be a mentor. They were definitely someone that was in a position that I would like to be in the future. And I met with them one time, and at the end of our 1 hour discussion, I got a sales pitch.
Oh
And I was like,
no.
oh no, this is horrible. And my spirit
Yeah.
felt it coming, like
Yeah.
30 minutes in. And I was like, oh
I
gosh,
hate that.
this is
Like, what?
terrible. Like,
Yeah.
why are some people like this now?
Yeah. But it's really unfortunate. I'm finding that a lot of people are having a hard time creating that human connection. Especially, I'm finding Black women are having a challenge creating that, not because they don't want to, but because when they open up, it's like they get closed doors, or closed hearts, whatever you want to call it, but it's not reciprocal.
Hmm.
So for women that are seeking mentors and they're all about building that human connection and they want it, but it's not received. I just encourage you to just keep going. You will find the people. I know
Hmm.
early on in my career, I was like, okay, I want to get to the place where I have that mentorship. And it came about me asking that question, right? I didn't know that was how it was going to come about, but it came about in that way. So it will happen for you. Don't be discouraged. Just
Hmm.
continue to speak up, be confident, and know that whatever space you're in, you're supposed to be there, and don't
Hmm.
shy away. So
Hmm. That's great too. So along your journey, you mentioned earlier that you would notice that there was a difference between people who achieved a certain level of success and people who didn't achieve a certain level of success. Can you mention maybe about three things that you noticed that was a differentiator between the two groups of people?
yeah, I talk a lot, so I'll keep it short. Um, communication. Communication is uh, it's um, it's powerful, and I find that the people that communicate with just strategic communication. They were the ones that their career went the distance. So that's one. Um, I would also say they got in front of the things that mattered. They weren't heads down, like, doing their job. And when I talk to my clients about, like, focusing on the things that matter, it looks a certain way, and we don't have enough time to go through that, but
Hmm.
it looks a certain way. It's not just it's not just like, bringing up a topic to your boss. There's a strategy around focusing on the things that matter, and they did that well. And I think the third thing was that they have this mindset that, uh, to keep it simple, there's no dumb question, right?
Hmm.
The they're relevant. They ask relevant questions, but there's no dumb question. And
Hmm.
being bold enough to know that they matter and they're supposed to be in that space. So whatever question that they're asking that's relevant for the meeting, the time, they'll ask it with confidence. So those are three things I think are it was just something I've noticed, and I've implemented those things in my persuasive mindset method as well.
That's great. So when we talk about achieving work-life balance, obviously boundaries is extremely important. A lot of times I notice that men can implement boundaries so much better than a lot of women can. And so how do we get to a space as women where we're comfortable, like you said, after we get to a point where we assess our values, things that are important to us, setting boundaries and actually following through and enforcing them?
Yeah, I think ultimately you have to want the boundary for yourself. Like, you have to
Mhm.
want it. Like, and I'm guilty of this too, right? So you talk. There's a lot of talk about wanting boundaries, but the next minute someone gives you something, and you're like, "Shit, is this something I should take on because it'll get me more time with my leader or whatever it may be." If you haven't made the declaration within yourself that, like, I need to do like X and set that boundary to ensure that what that thing is no longer happening, it will continue to happen. But specifically, I would suggest that women create um, clear boundaries, and if they need to, like link them to a specific goal. So, for example, I need this boundary to protect my focus on right X, whatever the maybe a project, or I need this boundary to spend more time with my children. So just framing boundaries as non-negotiables that align
Mhm.
with their productivity and well-being. I think that's a perfect way for them to gain buy-in from others. But first, I think they need to assert within themselves that having boundaries is okay and they're
Mhm.
required.
Yeah, yeah. And setting them before we hit a brick wall, right?
Yeah.
Before we like have, actually experience the burnout where everything is just falling apart and then, maybe probably should have done it a year ago. Are there some things that maybe we should look at or expect or desire from our family and friends just to make sure that we have work-life balance in our lives? We talked earlier about women feel like they maybe need to do it all and maybe spreading themselves too thin. So, are there some conversations that you think that are important to have maybe with your spouse or?
Yeah, that's a big one. I'm working on that daily. Like, just I mean, for I think first things first, right, is communicating. Right, communicating the need that you need X person to step up and do whatever that thing is to be able to give you more time to focus on the things that matter to you.
Mhm.
Mm, But like I said earlier, understanding the boundaries that you want to put in place is important. I think that's I would continue to say it's first and foremost. And then giving people specific responsibilities like, "Hey, mom, I need you to wake the baby up, right? At this time. I'm not going to be able to do it anymore because of X, right?"
Mhm.
And then I would also say, if I think community is important. So if you need to set up like support groups or support rhythms where you have regular family connection or support to be able to come in during predictable times and creating a predictable system to get to help alleviate some of the daily things that you need to do, implement that. Right? If there's people in your family that are like, "How can I help you?" Bring them all together and say, "Okay, you guys have all asked me for help. This is what I need from you."
Mhm, mhm. And a lot of times it seems like there's a lot of families that don't actually, live near their family of origin, and as a,
Yeah.
veteran family myself, I know how difficult it can be to really, create a circle of trust, but it's almost required, it's so necessary, right? I mean, sometimes you can find good friendship in a complete, not a stranger, obviously, but
Yeah.
someone that maybe you didn't know growing up, maybe
Yeah.
you have shared values, in another area.
Yeah. I mean, I still believe it takes a village,
Mhm.
especially in today's day, right? When women are working, and a lot of hours are required to get the job done nowadays, and we have children. It definitely takes a village to be able to to navigate your career and just navigate life overall. If someone doesn't have family nearby, the recommendation I would have, I think you've mentioned it, is just build relationships. Right, if you go to church, right, find a church group, a family, a church, a family. I think it's a life group. Join one of those. I used to be in a life group, and those communities, they create a support system for you if you
Mhm.
ask for it, right? I think a big part is recognizing and then asking, right? Like so many things in life, right? So asking for that support that's needed.
Yeah, yeah, I can attest to that too personally. My husband and I went, like, I think it was 7 years without having a date night.
Oh God.
And yeah, it was ridiculous. It was terrible because time was sometimes just goes by so fast
Okay.
and you're so busy working or moving to a different location and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is why we're arguing more so than we used to because we are not taking time to recharge and reconnect." And
Yeah. My
so,
husband
like,
was
we
like,
made an agreement
"Yeah, you
with
have to."
a you get it?
Yeah. You see, I'm shaking my head. I'm like, oh my God, my husband knows, like, we are having date night. Like, I don't know. Like, it
Yeah.
has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely on a good system now, but it took,
Good.
us having to really spend time to invest in friendships outside of
Yeah.
work and really grow and develop and nurture them. And what
Yeah.
we found is there were a lot of other couples that even live in our neighborhood that we're close friends with that, didn't have the opportunity to do date night as well. So we created like a system,
Yeah.
where you bounce around and, this couple gets to go out at this time or maybe even hire a nanny. You can,
Yeah.
go on care.com, those type of things aren't often talked about in social
Yeah.
groups and how much of an impact it can have on your professional career.
That's right. I'm a queen of anyone that knows me, I'm like a queen of outsourcing. So I have people like someone cleans my house.
Mhm.
Someone I have a nanny. I have someone used to wash my clothes. And I know that everyone might not be able to do that. But find the areas in your life that you can outsource so you can get more of your time back, right? So you can do more of the things that matter to you. I think
Yeah.
that's what it's about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, and giving yourself permission that it's okay that you're not less than a woman because someone else is cleaning your home or, taking care of your children while you go to the gym for, an hour and a half or when you go to work or something like that. Like those things are okay. We can
Yeah,
design the life that works for us.
that's right.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, it's your life. And you can decide to live it and you work, sleep. And then, we all have an expiration date. And then when you're in your last days and you're looking back and you're like, wow, I spent all of my life working and sleeping, working and sleeping. Or you can be intentional and, create some joy in there by setting those boundaries so you can do again more of what you love, spend time with more of the people that you love. It's really about just being intentional about your life and not letting things like not letting things stress you, especially work,
Mhm.
especially work. So yeah.
Yeah. I was reading a recent article from Harvard Business Review, and it said burnout is not about your workplace. Um, burnout is about your workplace, not your people. So basically, taking the responsibility off the individual to correct burnout and more so putting the responsibility on the organization. So I want to talk about,
Mm,
especially with your background, on what are some ways that the organization can help support its people to prevent burnout.
yeah. Can you say that again? So the HBR said what? That
Yeah.
burnout is about the work.
Burnout is about your workplace, not your people.
Okay.
So place more emphasis on the importance of the organization providing structure and practices
Okay,
systems
got
in
it.
place to support the overall wellness of the individual.
I have some thoughts on that. I
Mhm.
agree, but I just also disagree with that as
Mhm.
well. But so what would I recommend so are we speaking specifically for the individual or for opportunities for the workplace to make it a more flexible place for folks to work?
Let's see about the workplace. This yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, I believe that, if if an employer is serious about reducing their turnover
Mhm.
and increasing the morale of the company, they it's in their best interest, right, to ensure that the people that they employ are they feel like they have flexibility. They feel like they have the ability to be productive. So, I would say that it's about truly for an employer to be more collaborative with their employees and really understand as much as right, as they can, like what's the unique demographic of the people that work in their company. And once you understand, because there's a lot of data we can dig into from HR to understand like the demographics, the age range. If we have caregivers, you can dig into all of that. If you understand your workplace and the structure of the workforce, then you can then start to implement strategic initiatives that foster a space for people to feel like they have a more flexible work arrangement. So, for example, if you have a high population or a demographic of employees that are caregivers and they need that additional time because they have aging and ailing parents,
Mhm.
you look at it, how can we start implementing things that will support those individuals during the hardest time of their life, right? They likely, what we found when I was in corporate was that the employees that were caregivers also had like children, so they're managing their parents, their aging parents, and then they also managing their usually younger kids, anywhere from like the ages of 13 and under. So implementing programs to support that demographic, then also supporting demographic of, not just women, right, that are having the children, but also the husband, right? Because or the partner that they're not carrying the child, but they are a part of that, those early, early months when the child is first born. I think that creates a space where an employee feels like my employer cares about me and they want me to have a positive experience here. They want me to have a positive mental health and they want to give me flexibility. Because when we give only, for example, maternal maternity leave just to the woman, so what does it say? What does it say about the man's role in taking care of a new child that they both they both had together, right? So we have to be mindful that we're creating flexible workplace initiatives that meet the needs of every employee, right? At at some level where we likely can't
Hmm.
meet everyone's needs, but at the highest percentage. And because that's ultimately for the employer, it's going to benefit them in the long run, because when you are intentional about the workplace flexibility that you create for your employees, you're having employees they're more loyal to the company. They're staying for a longer term period, and you have less turnover.
Yes, absolutely. I also noticed that I read on CNBC that 46% of women have higher levels of burnout than men. So, my next question to you is, what are some self care practices, maybe personal self care practices, that you think that will be most beneficial to women in managing their mental health and preventing burnout?
Yeah, so I mean, every woman is different. So I'll just kind of throw some that from like cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT, that's shown that actually works for most people. So like gratitude sessions, like spending about 5 minutes a day and just talking, like writing it down or meditating, thinking about the things that you're thankful for.
Hmm.
There's also opportunities to meditate and just reflect. And whether you are a person that prefers morning reflections or evening reflection, just taking the time to reflect. And even during that reflection period, thinking about the things that you're grateful for and have gratitude in your heart for. I would also say something that is, I think I mentioned earlier, like just intentional journaling,
Yeah.
getting things out. It's very healing to be able to not just, I think oftentimes you keep things, we're keeping all of the stuff in our mind. We're thinking, we have so many thoughts going through our head, just getting it out and knowing that once you've written it all out, it's out of your head and you can just kind of breathe easy, knowing that you've been able to release. So there's tons of others, right? But I would say those are some that, in my study of CBT, because I'm so like passionate about creating transformation for women. I started studying more about like cognitive behavioral therapy and really try to create really powerful transformations for women. I just wanted to share a few of them that uh, CBT recommends as best practices.
Those are all so phenomenal. As I've gotten older, I recognize the importance of going to a therapist. And so I go see my therapist definitely every 2 weeks. And one of the things that she taught me is this brain dumping exercise. So it's like,
Mm,
as soon as you wake up in the morning, you pretty much like journal any of your negative thoughts that you may have. And then you just rip up the piece of paper, you throw it away. And I use like a guided meditation session online. Like you can just find something that you resonate with on YouTube. And a lot of people say that they don't have a lot of time to really focus on meditation. But like they have some that are as short as 5 minutes, some 10 minutes, and so you just lay
yeah.
there and you just populate your brain with just positive thoughts and things like that. And for me personally, I noticed that I felt so much better throughout the day and more grounded when I wake up early and do those type of things before I like give attention to the children or the
Mm,
house.
I like
So I
that.
totally agree with a lot of things that you mentioned there too. And it goes back to just like you said, being intentional and
Yeah.
carving out that time for us.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. You said you would write it down, then throw it away. I'm intrigued. I want to know, like, what's the practice?
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of times what psychologists and therapists talk about is, we all get negative thoughts. And
Hmm.
so it's about, recognizing that the negative thoughts that we receive aren't necessarily our own, like they don't belong to us, making sure that they don't stick. But you got to have a place for them. And so they pop up. And so you literally just take a piece of paper, and then so you just write out every negative thing that you've been thinking or things that have been popping up in your head, whether it's, you feel like you're a bad mom or a bad spouse. And you write it down on a piece of paper and you rip it up and you throw it away.
I love that.
But the key is you replenish it with something that's more positive. And so if
Mm,
someone's
okay.
struggling with confidence, for example, there's some YouTube videos, meditation videos about confidence. And so you would just lay there after you do that, and then you would just replenish your mind with some positive thoughts. And things like that, she told me, are really good to do within the first 30 minutes of waking up. Or you can do an exercise like that 30 minutes before going to bed, just to kind
Yeah.
of ground yourself.
I love
Really,
that.
really works for me. Yeah. Yeah. Because things like depression, I don't think that a lot of people are very open about discussing it, but depression, anxiety, they're all very common. And
Unreal. Yes.
yeah, sometimes we can, try to be superwoman and, think that everything's okay. And then things like brain fog start kicking in, and you're like, I can't perform, I can't do this. And, you really do sometimes hit a wall,
Yeah.
you know?
We do hit a wall. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a big one for me, and really what brought her power pose to a place that I get. I mean, I've always been passionate about this work, but with my, this, and with my child being diagnosed with cancer at 4 months old, it- this work, it just became even more important to me because during that period of time, if I didn't create, and not saying it was perfect, right? But if I didn't create boundaries and know how to create boundaries with every employer I've ever worked with, I could have had I mean, I could have had a serious like meltdown, right? You're already having mental health challenges from the fact that your child was diagnosed with cancer and you're going through a lot. It's a lot of trauma. There's so many things that it's too much to talk about. But because the boundaries that I created from the intentional, like, time blockers, right, that I put on my calendar that I've done for years, and the way I tee up my one-on-one so I'm in control of them, all of those things created the opportunity for me to, when this diagnosis came down, I didn't feel pressure from work. I I had pressure from the diagnosis and the hospital and all that, but not from work. So it just made it super important to me because I was just like, man, I can't imagine how many women that don't understand how they can have boundaries, do their work with ease, get to the next level with ease. And they feel like they have to, like, stress themselves to get there. If a diagnosis like this happened to them or their family member, God forbid, like, what would that do to their emotional state at work? So it helped me get even more clear about what her power pose was about. It was about helping women achieve career success and accelerated career success with ease and without burnout. Because in this life we live in, it's not if something's going to happen, it's when. So
Yeah.
how do you set up yourself so when something happens in your life, you can still be very strategic in the way that you work? And could it could it, you know, derail you a little bit from where you're trying to go? Yes, because you're in the moment taking care of the things you need to take care of, but overall it won't have such a significant impact in your career. Where I've seen time and time again, when a woman has a child, when a woman gets sick, the impact it has on her career, she generally can't bounce back from it.
Hmm.
So that's why this work is so important to me. I just want to support women to be able to create create balance, but still be able to achieve the career success that they deserve.
Oh, you know, I did, obviously, I follow your Facebook page, and I saw, when you shared about your son, and oh, my heart went out to you, and I'm so happy that, things are better, progressing,
Yeah,
and I am really in awe of you. I'm sure that that was a really challenging time for your family.
it
Um,
was.
yeah, to see you now, um, with so much more passion. I mean, and
Yeah,
purpose. And, a lot of people, they may look at someone like you, and obviously they're going to be so inspired, but you just never know what someone's going through behind closed doors to get to this place.
yeah, that's
And
right.
I really commend you for using that chapter to really bless other people.
Yeah. Initially, like I've always, like I said, I've always been a career coach, and it was really about like making more money and um, getting to the title. And those things are still really relevant because someone's goals, right? They are their goals. But it's for me now, it's about how do I help you get there, but be smart about your time.
Mm-hmm.
Not sacrifice the time that you want to take your kids to the park, like in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you and your husband want to, you know, go have a lunch date in the middle of the day. Like, how do you do these things strategically? How do you do them smart? How are you intentional about them? And they don't derail you from the goals that you have set for yourself. So that's what it's all about. And I'm just so excited that God has given me just this renewed passion to support women in the United States, corporate America, to be able to create balance in their lives.
I love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. You have a huge supporter here. I'm always a fan of
Thank you,
the work
girl.
that you do.
Thank you.
Um, Did you notice in the times that you maybe were the most stressed or you struggled the most, did you have some relationships that weren't there to support you that you maybe thought that, well, you maybe invested in before and then realized that, I don't know, they just didn't,
Yeah. I
I
think
know, I
that,
think you know what
what's
I'm
so
going
funny?
at. So how do we like really figure out?
Yeah. I'll let you finish the question because I have a response for that.
Yeah, because sometimes before things, significant or hardship really occurs, you'll sometimes people will find themselves investing into people, giving away so much of our time, which our time is so valuable. You and I both know that.
Yes.
Um, to people who maybe don't share the same values as us. And
Yeah.
so you have a moment where, things maybe are falling apart, and that community that you thought you built didn't support you during that time.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to see, are there some indicators or some things that you maybe watch for when you're, actually giving away your time to people?
Yeah.
Make sure you have, common ground and or like-minded, I should say.
If you asked me this question some years ago, I'd probably say, well, those people aren't for you. Move around. Um, I'm trying not to get emotional. I cry a lot. I'm a crybaby.
You too. It's okay.
But I would tell you to move around and just don't worry about those people. But I'm just like it when you are in a season of like like a tough season and life is hard and shit is just crumbling. It's so interesting how God brings helpers. And you have helpers and you have people that you never even, like in my case, more specifically, I had people that I didn't even know. Like I didn't know them from Adam. And I always get so emotional talking about it because it was the wildest thing to have women, and now they're good, they're really good friends, but to have women that they didn't even know my name. And they were running into my house bringing food and doing all the things
Mm,
during this period. So because of those women, I will say that it's changed my whole perspective on community. So now
yes.
I give people the community that I want. I don't look at what other people are doing for me anymore. Like that, I don't have time for that. I give people what I would want to be given to me. And most people that know me know I'm pretty selfless. Like I give a lot. And once upon a time in my life, I was really burdened by I'm always giving, but I couldn't stop it because it's just who I am. Like I just love.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I stopped it, it would change me and I'd be bitter because, you know, people are not giving it back to me. I didn't want to be like that. But I met this group of women, the helpers, now friends that God has brought in my way, and they have made me realize that it it's not about looking at who's doing what for you and they're not here, they're not showing up. It's just create like, just be what you want to receive from other people, and the right people will shine that back to you. And that's really all I have to say. So even now, like if someone's going through something, and yes, that person might not have been there for me when I was going through my stuff. Or maybe, a friend's doing something and I'm there for them and they weren't there for when I did mine. I don't even look at that anymore because
Hmm.
I want to be a person that is a helper to someone else. And I want to create community for someone else, even though they may not have created that community for me. And that's just how I lead my life now. So, and it's works. I'm joyful. I'm happy, and I feel like I'm just in a place of just being thankful, but I don't do it to a place where it creates stress for me. That's the
Hmm.
big part. Because yes, you want to be and show up for someone even if they didn't show up for you. But when it starts to feel like it's a burden or it's stressful, then that's when I know I start asking myself, like, why are you really doing this? Like, are you trying to prove something to that person or to yourself? And that's when I have to step back and be reflective in that. So I would advise anyone that if you have a community and they didn't show up for you in the time of need, know that everybody's going through something in this life. Some you can see, outwardly, and some it's internal. So give them grace and show up for people the way that you want people to show up for you.
That's beautiful. You answered that question so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, my dear.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to definitely share all of your contact information if anyone needs coaching. And you have a wonderful newsletter. Can you tell us a little bit about
Oh,
that?
thank you. Yeah, so I have the Power Polls. The Power Polls, I send it out every Sunday at 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. I chose Sunday because I'm getting my powerhouse women ready for the week.
Hmm.
So it very actionable insights on how to navigate their career, how to land jobs, basically end to end, anything you can think about in your career. That's what I'm writing about in the Power Polls. So I can share a link for anyone that wants to subscribe to the newsletter. And like I said, every Sunday, I do not overwhelm you with a lot of emails. I do not like that myself, so I don't do it to people. It's every Sunday. And then I have something that's going to be launching in January. It's called the Career Coach Academy. And in the Career Coach Academy, it's a job support community for high achieving women. And Zakia truly is everything a woman can leverage for her job search, right? So whether she just got laid off or she doesn't like where she's working now, or even in transition, we're talking like anything. Like we have like right now like over 15 plus resume templates. My persuasive mindset method program is going to be in the community. I'm going to bring some of my leadership friends. So I already have some. My mentor, she's a head over there at